Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Beloved JRPG of the... The 8th console generation. Apparently.
We're at 8? What do you mean we're at 9?
But even such a beloved game has its fair share of black sheep. Like the tutorials, and the character designs, and the English voice acting.
Shut up!
And the field skills.
What is inside box?
Opening protocol in game.
Let's clear this up quick.
Oh yeah, cool.
Erasing.
Coochie coochie coo!
Open up!
No lock shall stand in our way.
Shut up!
And the story pacing.
You were staring.
Huh?
And Tiger. And... Tora! We're talking about Tora! Nopon, little big guy, says meme a lot. Tora is one of the biggest things people will warn you about when trying to get you to play this game for the first time. You know, besides the fucking tutorials. Like, yeah, I know, the fuzzball is cringe, just ignore him, I promise, the game is good. But why do people have such an aversion to Tora? And is his reputation as the party's black sheep completely justified? Well, we're gonna find that out today, ladies and gentlemen. This is the good, the bad, the meme. This is the defense of Tora. So, to start off, we're gonna go over his crimes, so to speak, and give some general background as a bit of a refresher. Tora is known for 2 scenes in particular, both of which are fairly early game. The first one is the scene where Tora is activating his artificial blade Poppi for the first time. Now, this scene is infamous. I've seen so many people reacting to it as stream highlights and YouTube shorts, or some other third thing, that if I had a nickel for every time I saw one, I could have single-handedly ended the Great Depression if I was back in 1929. Quick refresher for those who don't remember so good. He leaves the cringe settings on by accident, gets caught in 4K, and then Pyra gives him the look. Trademark. I get it. The scene's a little... with Poppi doing the whole calling a master thing, doing the kawaii sugoi desne anime pose, to Tora having a bunch of outfits that are implied to be for dressing up Poppi. This scene, along with the next one, comes across as pretty yikes. Speaking of the second scene, Blushy Crushy. This scene starts out innocuous enough, like a horror movie might, with Pyra making tea for Tora and Nia. Then Tora is like, Pyra-chan, Then Tora is like, Pyra-chan, you're doing pretty daijobu. Pyra-chan, you're doing pretty daijobu, but it would be moto sugoi if you acted more kawaii, desu. Okay, I'm gonna do that again. Then Tora is like,
Pyra-chan, you're doing pretty daijobu, but it would be moto sugoi if you acted more kawaii, desu.
Then Nia's like, Tora, what the actual fuck? Pyra is understandably weirded out until Tora says,
Blushy crushy
is something that appeals to all boys. Pyra then remembers that Rex is indeed a boy before deciding to open Pandora's box, heedless of the consequences. Tora brings in Poppi to demonstrate
optimal blushy crushy.
Pyra tries her best, which is really all we can ask of her, and then Nia dies of cringe. This heart-to-heart is pretty rough. In fact, I'm gonna admit something here. I have never, in my 5 playthroughs of Xenoblade 2, and the God knows how many people I've watched play this game, have ever made it through this heart-to-heart without having to get up and take a break at least once. So, surprise! I actually forgot an important heart-to-heart while I was writing the script and did not want to have to reiterate everything before this. So let's talk about Poppi's remodel real quick. So this heart-to-heart is accessed in Tora's house as early as Chapter 5. I think. Look, the wiki didn't say when it was first accessible, so I'm just going to go with when Bridget and Morag joined the party and hope I'm right. This heart-to-heart is probably Tora at his most yikes, which is saying something. where Bridget and Pyra find a bunny costume that they assume Tora made for Poppi. Which, quick side note, while I was looking this up on the wiki to make sure I got all the details right, I found a comment that apparently in the Japanese version of the game, it was actually bikini armor, not a bunny outfit. And I couldn't find a transcript of the unlocalized version, so no idea if this is true or not. Wouldn't be surprised if it was. But we're talking about the English version of the game for the most part, so we're going to move on. Anyway, after finding the bunny outfit, Bridget and Pyra confront Tora about it, and this is one of those heart-to-hearts where the dialogue choices have a pretty big impact on where it goes. In the first option, Tora tries to deflect by blaming it on his father and grandpa again, only for Poppi to leak his Twitter DMs and tell them that he designed the tail wiggle protocol, Jesus fucking Christ, and that he's been feverishly perfecting it. After which, Bridget asks Tora about his views on women before he gets scared, then it ends. In the second option, Tora doubles down and says the armor is the work of 3 generations of horny bastards, which even Pyra's like, not cool, dude. Bridget says they should burn it. Pyra tries to, with Tora trying to stop them. Then Bridget sends him to Jesus. This brings us to the crux of the point. These 3 scenes, that I remember to mention all of from the beginning, share one key similarity. Beyond being cringe. They show Tora's biggest flaw. His inability to act like a normal fucking human being. Like, in all of these, Tora is basically doing his best job to be that guy in high school that unironically asked if you wanted to see his katana collection. You're not really supposed to be taking the guy seriously, and that's kind of the point. Early game Tora is basically a caricature of the shut-in weeb in its natural habitat. Now, all my English teachers used to say one thing to me. What the hell is wrong with you? That might have been all my teachers now that I think about it. On a related note, a lot of them also used to say, you can make all these fancy points and cite a bunch of sources from the text or whatever else, but if you're writing to convince someone of something, it needs to answer this one question. So what? Well, here's your so what. Tora's early game transgressions are more than just some cheap comic relief. They show the beginning of Tora's development from being said shut-in weeb to a somewhat morally upstanding person to being a hero who tries to save the world. Now, to understand where someone's going, you need to understand where they've been. So let's start our defense off with his early life and the circumstances that surround it. But first, here feels as good a place as any to throw down a big fat spoiler warning. From here on, we're talking mid to late game plot spoilers, and even some Xenoblade 3 spoilers, which I'll mark with a timestamp or a YouTube chapter if I figure out how those work by the time I finish this, no promises. Now, spoiler warning aside, we learn about Tora's early life in Chapter 4, which, yes, I did remember off the top of my head, thank you for asking, where we see a very young and very naked, for some reason, Tora, in the lab with his father and grandfather as they work on Lila, the first artificial blade that the latter have spent most of their lives on, who's in a maid outfit. I'm starting to see where Tora gets it from. Like, no joke, it kind of makes sense why Tora's such a weeb. He was literally raised on nothing else. Anyway, pin that for later. After Tora flashes everyone, a very mysterious masked Nopon comes in, takes Tora's grandpa out of the retirement home in the cruelest way possible. Then his father gives him a Sailor Moon lunchbox and sends him off to school while he goes with the nice men to buy some milk. No, not that milk! Probably. This look into Tora's early life already gives 2 pretty big reasons for his not-so-great behavior. No, not those! The first is that after this event, he is essentially raising himself as far as we know. Like, no one else is living with him when we meet him, and he never brings up like a caretaker or anyone who even just drops by to check on him and make sure he hasn't suffocated to not alive on tasty sausages or something. The second, bigger one is that when someone was actually raising him, they were both massive coomers. Like, Tora's grandfather apparently learned how to make the anatomy of his artificial blades by looking at Xenoblade 2's version of Playboy. Like, there is no universe where a young child is constantly exposed to borderline female chicken wearing a tie and doesn't end up at least kinda fucked up. Like, all things considered, he could have ended up way worse. Like, dead in a ditch somewhere worse. Like, how did Tora even feed himself? Or afford the house he lives in? Or really afford anything in general? He didn't seem to have a job or anything. I mean, one of his heart-to-hearts with Poppi in the Ardanian warship, he apparently stole a lot of the parts he made her with from Ardanians, so hell if I know, man. Point being, Kid had a bit of a rougher upbringing than you might have first realized. Now, many of you may have been confused by the use of the word kid there, but no, that was in fact not past tense, but we are instead getting into our second reason. Tora, throughout the main plot of Xenoblade 2, is a literal child. Like, not just a child, but I'm pretty sure he's younger than Rex, who is 15, by the way, considering how much he looks up to him. Hell, in the Japanese version, he calls him Aniki, or Big Brother, as a sign of respect. I don't really know how much more overt it can be. So yeah, I kinda guesstimate him at like 2 years younger than Rex, so 13 if you know how to do math, which keep in mind is not confirmed, like he doesn't have a listed age on the wiki or anything, but I still feel like it fits his overall character, because when you look at Tora through the lens of he's 13, a lot of what he does starts making a lot more sense. Because I don't know about you, but I was cringe as shit when I was 13. Like, I remember reading a lot of light novels in class after I finished my work early, which doesn't sound that bad, until you realize this is what some of the covers look like. You know, I'm starting to figure out why no one wanted to be my friend in middle school. This is what kids who are really into anime just do. Like, Tora just waddling up with his Dakimakura turned to the lewd side because he's feeling saucy and talking your ear off about how High School DxD is a cinematic masterpiece and you just don't understand how great it is because you're uncultured or something. Now, you could argue that Tora growing up doesn't instantly solve the problem. I mean, Discord mods are a thing after all. But I don't think Tora's heading in that direction because of the people around him. If Tora stayed holed up in his labs until his 20s or something, I'd believe that he'd just stay the same kinda creepy guy. But he made friends who don't encourage his bad behavior and serve as role models for who he should grow into, and how he should treat Poppi as both a friend and his blade. I want to draw attention to another early heart-to-heart taking place almost immediately after Blushy Crushy called Tora's Angst, which I don't even want to do a funny haha recap of because of how important I think it is. To get to this heart-to-heart, you need to use certain field skills, meaning it takes you to a view that only a driver could see, something that Tora is ecstatic about, until he asks Rex and Nia for some advice about being a driver. Now, it's not something like how to look cooler when passing the weapon, or some other vapid crap like that. He asks if Poppi is better off without him, if she'd be more powerful and more useful to the group if his subpar fighting skills weren't dragging her down. He even considers if it would be better if he just sat on the sidelines and did maintenance on Poppi when needed. After hearing this, Nia can ask Tora one of two questions. The first question is, why did you want to be a driver? Tora says that at first, he kind of just got swept up into being one because that's what his father and grandfather wanted to be. But after traveling with Rex and everyone, he wanted to be more like Rex, going on adventures, saving people who need saving, and facing new challenges every day, in his own words. Nia then tells him that those feelings are all he needs to continue being a driver, and Dialogue A ends with Tora promising to become a greater driver. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier when I said Rex and company were a great influence on Tora. Dialogue B has Nia asking a slightly more introspective question than before. What's the most important thing for a driver? And Tora gives a surprisingly similar answer to Van Damme of all people. Love. Now you may be asking, didn't Van Damme say the most important thing was to protect your blade? Well, yeah, he did, but hear me out. To love something, in my opinion, is almost synonymous with wanting to protect it. Like, real quick, everyone at home, think of the thing or the person you love more than anything else. Now imagine that thing or person being put in danger in some way. You feel this instinctive need to jump in and keep it safe, right? My whole synonym point aside, after Tora says love, Rex and Nia are taken aback. Then a little flustered when Tora says he notices how much Rex loves Pyra, which is kinda cute. But even though Tora says he truly loves Poppi, he still feels like just having that feeling isn't enough to be a driver. Nia kinda gets fed up with his pity party and just brings Poppi to ask if she doesn't want Tora as her driver. Poppi gets upset at the mere notion that Tora wouldn't be her driver anymore, before Dialogue B ends with Tora once again promising to strive towards new heights as a driver. This last route in particular really emphasizes something I think a lot of people miss about Tora, that he genuinely loves Poppi. Not in like some weird, twisted sex way, but in this sweet, almost familial way. Like, a lot of people seem to think Tora views her as some sort of Nopon sex doll, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Tora never acts in a way where he sees Poppi like that. For example, Poppi is sorta known for roasting the shit out of Tora, like, all the time. If Tora didn't care about Poppi beyond her being a kawaii ugu anime girl, he would have just disabled that part of her personality or made a mute button or something. But he doesn't, because he respects that for better or worse, that's just a part of who Poppi is, and he wouldn't violate her trust or freedom by meddling with that. With that out of the way, the last thing I want to talk about here is the Chapter 8 quest, Powered Up Poppi, where if you go back to Tora's house anytime post Land of Mythra, you can unlock Poppi's third and most powerful form. Seriously, this shit's broken. I think this quest really shows off how far Tora has come as a person. Like, for starters, I can't remember a single creepy thing that Tora says or does during this quest off the top of my head, which is an accomplishment in and of itself. But it also shows Tora coming into his own and stepping out of his father's kinda horny shadow. He's leading this project. He's telling his father what to do. He's telling his father that his designs for Cutie Pie are fucking shit. Or just something Banna would come up with. Which is worse. Which usually falls under the realm of make it big, and if that doesn't work, slap a G on its head. Like, real talk for a second here. Does Banna got like a giantess thing or something? His first instinct when he saw Lila was, make her big enough to step on me. But that's just a theory. A game theory! Back to Powered Up Poppi, I've always believed that Tora and Poppi kind of mirror each other's growth. Like back in Chapter 4, when Tora resolves some of his father issues by finding and rescuing his father, Poppi matures by getting QT mode. Though you could also argue that Poppi only matured enough for QT mode because she grew to understand more about herself and her place in the world through fighting and talking to Lila. And that really nice scene where she says she'll save all their new sisters, something she never actually does, but the scene is still nice. And that Tora followed her lead and matured a bit because she did. You could argue either way, and to be honest, the order doesn't really matter here. It's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. This is why I said they mirror each other, because whenever one of them grows and matures, it pushes the other to do the same and match them. Powered Up Poppi shows this excellently, as said before. While Tora is growing by stepping out into his own, Poppi goes to school to learn more about the world and how to be a proper lady. Now you might say, that's not a lot compared to Tora leading a project, and you're kinda right. But that's because Poppi grew so much more in the time between QT mode and getting QT Pie. So this quest is a bit more Tora focused because he needed to catch up to Poppi, who had a lot of great solo development between the two. Like when she pulled Rex out of his funk after he lost Pyra and Mythra. Or that incredible scene in the Land of Mythra where Mythra helps Poppi come to terms with her fears about what technology like her could do to the world, and how it might be better if she just didn't exist. The same fears Mythra has had to grapple with the last 500 years. Also, their little high five is adorable. I also want to give a little shout out to Spirit Crucible LPs. This is a Poppi and Tora moment, but I just wanted to include it somewhere because I think it's neat. But I like how they step up to take the lead in combat, since they're the only ones who can fight unhindered there. This is just a nice little moment for them, especially since you got Morag right after QT, and she is just objectively a better party member until you get Cutie Pie. Man, for this little bit about Powered Up Poppi, I've talked surprisingly little about Powered Up Poppi. But honestly, there isn't that much more to say about it that I haven't already said. That bit where she carries Tora around like a teddy bear at the end is cute. I already planned to talk about Xenoblade 3 stuff, and seeing how long the previous section was getting, seriously, it's like double the length of Section 2. I really let that one get out of hand. So I decided to just cut the Xenoblade 3 stuff into its own section to, 1, keep the third section from becoming large enough to develop its own gravitational pull, and 2, make it easier for people to avoid the 3 spoilers. So if you have not finished Xenoblade 3, please just skip to the next section, timestamp here. Start with, Tora has come a very long way since Xenoblade 2. Like, look at Origin! Not a single anime titty inside on that baby. And the inside, not a single maid cafe. Our boy really grew up. Jokes aside, what we're really going to be talking about here is one of the DLC heroes. The piss drinker herself, the artificial blade, Xeno! Xeno, as stated before, is an artificial blade, just like Poppi, that the 3 cast meet out in the middle of buttfuck nowhere protecting a Nopon caravan. Now, fast-forwarding a bit for the sake of brevity, Xeno says she was made by a Nopon named Usu, which sounds a lot like the name of Tora's grandfather, Professor Susu. Now, this implies Tora found a nice Nopon girl, wiped her up, and had a son that he named after his grandfather for some godforsaken reason. You're welcome for the mental image of Tora breeding, by the way. That's on the house. Now, Xeno's design implies a lot about how Tora changed. Because for better or worse, your parents tend to imprint a lot of their values onto you. So if Tora was the same cringy guy he was pre-Xenoblade 2, Usu probably wouldn't make such a relatively chaste looking design. Ino's design really doesn't scream horny weeb making his perfect waifu in insert MMO here, like Poppi sometimes does. Like, I wouldn't be embarrassed if someone walked into the room and saw Ino on my TV screen. I would, however, want to commit not alive if someone walked in during the middle of Poppi's magical girl transformation scene. Ino's design is just a gynoid. Like, hell, I guess from Persona 3 is more horny than Ino, and I think a big reason behind it is I feel like Tora course-corrected really hard when he got older. To the point where if someone brought up something cringy he did in the old days, he'd probably start banging his head into the floor Bochi style, mumbling about his dark history. So, naturally, he would want to spare his offspring from such a fate in the future, thus guiding a more appropriate design in Ino. Shame about the voice, though. And with that, the video's over. 9 pages talking about Tora. Now, after all this work, you must think Tora has to be one of my favorite characters in Xenoblade 2. In which, I have to say, hell no, he ain't even in my top 10. I think Tora just gets a worse rep than he honestly deserves. Like, I get why he's no one's favorite character, but just the sheer hatred I've seen for him sometimes is, frankly, astounding and kinda terrifying. So, I wanted to throw my 2 cents in the ring and show that there's more to Tora than most people think. Now, did I convince anyone that Tora is actually a good character? Who knows. And if you still hate Tora after this, fuck it, more power to you, man. I just kinda wanted to say my piece. In a 20-ish minute video that took me like 6 months to make, seeing how I started scripting in June, and at the time of recording, it's early November. So oops. I'm gonna try and streamline the process for next time so it hopefully doesn't take half a year for the next scripted video to come out. No promises. But with that, thank you for watching and making it this far. It genuinely means the world to me, especially if you liked it. Speaking of liking something, I hope you hit the like button, subscribe if you feel like it, maybe hit the bell if you're feeling generous. I also love comments. Just saying, it is almost Christmas. And hopefully I'll see you all next time. Bye!